This is the Paltalk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on Blip TV and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show, and I encourage you, as I always do, to go to PaltalkNewsNetwork.com. PaltalkNewsNetwork.com. Check it early and often, just like voting in Chicago, for news that you may or may not see, hear, or read in the mainstream media, but information that you need from our correspondents across the globe to make you a better informed citizen of this world. I hope many of you had an opportunity to hear the show that preceded this one. It's a brand new show. It's called the Israel News Agency. The publisher of the Israel News Agency, Joel Layden, who is our correspondent in Jerusalem, hosts that show now at 4 o'clock New York time on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, right here on the Paltalk News Network. He's got a real interesting story, which we have on the front page of the Paltalk News Network site, about the fact that Palestinians want to work for Jewish stores and businesses in the Jewish settlements, and they're being precluded from doing so. And there is very little economic infrastructure on the West Bank. And a poll that was taken by a Palestinian organization says that the Palestinians want to work for the Jews, in spite of the law that says that they can't. They actually burned down 2 businesses recently that had the audacity to hire Palestinians. God forbid the Palestinians move themselves forward. Second half of the show, we're going to find out about the health effects of the oil spill on those people who are involved in the cleanup, both volunteers and as well the contractors. And I have a couple other programming notes for you that you're going to be interested in. At 7 o'clock New York time, after the aftermath, Vinnie Parco, PI, will be on the air live right here on the Paltalk News Network. At 8 o'clock New York time, prime-time live coverage of President Obama's address to the nation about the BP oil spill. And you'll be able to comment on everything the president says. Other people allow the president to talk to you. We allow you to talk about him while he's talking to you and afterwards. Who else allows for that other than Paltalk? And at 10 o'clock, it's time for, what's the name of James's show, Cassandra? The Fact of the Matter, right?
That's absolutely right.
We're actually waiting for our guest to call back. He had problems with his phone. His name is Dr. Gordon Green, PhD. He's written a new book. It's called Making Your Education Work for You. And there's actually a passage in this book that's apropos to what they were talking about in the previous show. Now, wait a minute. We were talking about the Israelis and the Palestinians and the flotilla and the Gaza. What the hell does that have to do with making your education work for you, you ask? Well, he uses as an example of clear thinking and expressing oneself, which as a student you must do. Something that in August of 1962, President John F. Kennedy said about evoking the Monroe Doctrine in order to protect the United States from Soviet missiles that were being erected in Cuba. And the Israelis, the United States put up a blockade. Boaz, that's them calling me inadvertently. If you look on the calendar, there is a backup phone number. Could you try calling their backup phone number?
Will do right now, Gary.
Okay. And it's interesting. Nobody faults John F. Kennedy for the blockade that he put up around Cuba when it was discovered that the Soviets were putting missiles in Cuba that could attack the United States. Here, I'm going to find this real quickly while I'm treading water, waiting for our guest to come online. Page 138 of the book. The Monroe Doctrine, this is quoting August 29, 1962, John F. Kennedy. The Monroe Doctrine means what it has meant since President Monroe and John Quincy Adams enunciated it, and that is that we would oppose a foreign power extending its power to the Western Hemisphere, and that is why we oppose what is happening in Cuba today. That is why we have cut off our trade. That is why we worked in the Organization of American States and in other ways to isolate the communist menace in Cuba. That is why we will continue to give a good deal of our effort and attention to it. I say Cuba because that's how President Kennedy said Cuba. So I find it really interesting that it's okay for the United States to protect itself from rocket attacks, but it's not okay for Israel to protect itself from rocket attacks. Any luck, Boaz, or shall we continue along to talk about this issue? The doctor is in the house. All right. Well, we're glad we sorted out the telecommunications issues. As I said before you joined us, but I will reiterate it, our guest is Gordon W. Green, Jr., Ph.D. He's a scholar, a statistician, a mathematician, and an author of numerous books. His latest is called Making Your Education Work for You. And this is really a book for both parents and for students in secondary education and in university.
That's correct.
Dr. Green, you put a big emphasis in your book, which I think is an awesome reference guide and isn't written as a reference guide, so it's easy reading, but it is exactly that, a reference guide, about the importance of getting a good education and getting good grades. You know, we as parents try to pound that into the heads of our children, but you used to work at the Census Bureau. You actually headed the division of the Census Bureau that kept